Hello and welcome back to Sakamichi Nights. I am Matthew Boynton and I am joined as always by Daniel Bellamy. How are you today, Daniel?
I got to say, it's pretty weird. I have headphones on, and this is not a normal podcast situation for me.
We're exuding professionalism here. Now,
Yeah.
Dan, I know that you're a huge basketball fan.
I am, yeah.
What is your favorite Kyushu-based basketball team?
They're all so good. It's
The
hard
Saga
to pick just
Ballooners,
one.
that's right.
That's
Yes,
it.
I knew
Yeah.
that. Now, what if I could tell you that this is going to be extraordinarily exciting for you? We are going to be joined on tonight's podcast by the stadium announcer for the Saga Ballooners. Go Loons, it's Mr. Bobby Judo. Hi, Bobby. How are you doing?
I'm still getting over getting fired from that job 2 years ago. How are you guys?
We've really raked up some old wounds here.
What happened? How'd you get
No,
fired?
no, I didn't. I didn't get fired. My contract was for 1 year, and they did not renew the contract. I suspect the person that replaced me was significantly cheaper.
I find that very hard to believe. How have you been making ends meet since you got fired by the Lunars then?
So the Lunars, as you probably know, just got promoted to B1.
I did know that. In the BJ League.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Just a couple of days ago, they won their tournament match to move on up to B1, which has been their goal since the year that I was let go. But yeah, no, I did that once a week during basketball season, and I was asked to do that because I am, for those of you who don't know, a local Fukuoka and Saga Kyushu area TV personality, TV and radio. And so when they were looking for somebody who could bring, what's the word? Gaijin? Is it Gaijin? Gaijin energy to stadium emceeing. They asked me, and since they were having a big year and planning on moving up to B1 their first year, having entered B2, they were kind of in all-out spending budget mode. And then when that didn't happen, I think there was some reevaluation. But luckily, even when that job went away, I still had my TV and radio jobs to fall back on.
How does it feel watching them reach the heights of the B1 league? Is it like seeing an old flame move on without you?
A little bit. It's a little bittersweet. I would have loved to have been along for the ride, but not so much that I would have done it without being paid.
Was the new announcer the thing that pushed them over the top, do you think?
It very well could be. Although I will say that a handful of the players have started visiting and eating at my restaurant, and that also might be what's done it.
Crikey! Well, you're filling them up with heavy meat right before a basketball game, and as I understand, that is bound to make you jump higher
Sure.
and slam more balls
That's
into
the way
more
physics
baskets.
and biology works.
Yes, absolutely. What for those maybe one or two people who are listening, I could end that sentence right there. For those one or two people who are listening who might not know who you are and might not know about your TV career in Fukuoka, what kind of programs do you present?
So I started out doing a cooking segment on a local Joho Bangumi, a local evening half news, half entertainment program, and I did a cooking segment called Bobby's Kitchen for all told in a handful of different permutations, but all told for about 12 years. And that was my main gig. It was cooking focused. But then from that, I started doing the sports news on a different local TV station in Fukuoka. I started presenting travel segments. I've presented disaster preparedness segments for NHK World. For a little while, I did things like Mystery Hunter on the show Sekai Fushigi Hakken. I've done a handful of national things, but most of my stuff has been local TV reporter. And if you're not familiar with the context of Japanese TV, when you say TV reporter, it's less journalist and more someone who declares food to be delicious.
You have to go to local restaurants, go to local businesses, and enjoy their products.
Hard-hitting stories.
Restaurants or businesses or events or hotels, a lot of like local travel segments and things like that, but also a handful of human interest stories. And I have a reputation in the area of being a character who is very good at interviews and very bad at making jokes.
Which must help in your second career as a stand-up comedian.
So that's why my stand-up comedy career is mostly in English, and I no longer try to do it in Japanese.
Right. We've all seen these segments where the talent go to a restaurant or go to an event and they eat something from the quivering chopsticks and
Yes.
declare it to be either oishi or umai, depending
Yes.
on how they're feeling that day.
Yeah.
You can be as vague as you like. What
Yeah.
thing that you have eaten have you found it the hardest to put a brave face on?
Oh, I won't be vague at all. It was the One Piece themed curry at the Netherlands themed theme park, House Ten Bosch in
House Ten
Nagasaki.
Bosch. We've cycled past House Ten Bosch.
Yeah.
What was so objectionable about it?
It was half frozen. It was almost cold. It was a lot of times for TV segments. What they'll do is they'll bring out a dish, and uh, if it's a TV segment with a proper budget and well run, and a director who likes you, what they'll do is they'll let you eat the first one that comes out, and then they'll order a second one and use that for all of the close up shots and the quivering chopstick shots. But in the case where like you're being paid by some larger organization, like Disneyland does it, House Ten Bosch does it, local companies that are doing paid promotions and bringing in multiple TV stations don't really care because they know you're paid to promote it no matter what. So they'll only provide one, and you have to use all of it for the close-ups. And then after you've done like an hour and a half of filming the food, that's what you eat. And so by the time I got to it, it was cold and congealed, and you still had to pretend it was the best thing you'd ever eaten in your life.
The consummate professional that you are, I'm sure you managed to get through it. So it wasn't the One Piece tie-in that was particularly objectionable, or even the Dutchness of it. It was just how cold and old
it was. It was just how cold and stale it had gotten and congealed on the plate. So what should we pair with that?
Yeah. I'm sure that we could mix that with some beer balls or some of the other delightful things that we have drunk on this program.
You didn't feel any obligation to go back, and you were like, I got to give this a second shot the way it's meant to be eaten. Go back there again and order it for yourself.
No, because it's theme park food. I mean, it's like any of the stuff you get in the cafeteria style restaurants at Disneyland. It's not quality food. Even like the One Piece theme stuff, it was all geared towards kids. So you know how like restaurants will have a kids menu or hotels will have a kids plate in Japan that's got all the same fried stuff. Like that little mashed potato in the shape of a smiley face that's been fried,
Yeah, sure.
or a little hamburger with like a flag toothpick stuck in it. It was all that stuff just in One Piece shapes.
So they went to great lengths, obviously, for the tie-in.
Yeah.
Now, we've mentioned that you also have a second career as a stand-up comedian. So I'm going to do something which I think all comedians love now, which is tell one of your jokes back to you.
Oh, yes. This will be great.
Comedians love this. And this is, I think, something that you said on Japan by River Cruise, your currently on hiatus podcast.
Yes.
And talking about ex-Prime Minister Abe and his assassination. I remember you saying that your mum had called you to say that it was very important that you return home to America because in Japan they had started shooting their politicians.
Yes.
And your reply was, I will go back when we start shooting ours. Now, as I understand, you just came back from a trip to America.
Yeah,
was it eventful?
No politician shot, although my trip was to Florida, and there's a couple of them that I could think of that should have been. Someone was just messaging me today to say if our Florida governor, Ron DeSantis, ends up getting elected president, that I should give up my citizenship. And my response was, no, I mean, he's not my governor. That's not my home anymore. I'm not from that state anymore, which I think was very much to their point. It was like, yeah, I should be giving up my citizenship at this point. But politics and assassinations aside, and potentially statements with potential legal ramifications set
I know that
aside.
the CIA do love listening to this podcast.
I'm sure they
They're
do.
tuning in. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, at this point, there's a whole division of the CIA whose job it is to scan through the podcasts of white men to look for terrorist activity.
It's certainly just being run through some kind of like voice analysis to pick out particular words, right?
Yeah,
Keywords,
and
yeah.
we all know that two white guys starting a podcast is the final step before political violence.
You think
Yeah.
there's someone sitting in a room trying to decipher what tubing means? They keep talking about tubing. We need to figure this out.
But America, was it as awful as you were expecting it to be?
My wife and daughters went for about a month, and I joined them for the last 2 weeks. And I mean, we kept it quiet. I stayed at home at my mom's place. I went to my nephew's bar mitzvah, visited relatives, went to some favorite restaurants and things like that, and didn't make a huge, big, road trip, or didn't really visit much of America except my old kind of my old personal stomping grounds. But it did confirm to me my general sense that America is over. America, like, is a crumbling republic. And the things that confirmed that for me were just how no matter where you go, nothing works. Everything is 10 times more expensive than it used to be. I'm exaggerating here, but like the cost of living has gone way up. The infrastructure is shot. Nothing works. Everything is shut down. And any store or any restaurant you go into is so severely understaffed that the service is so bad, and nobody even rails against it. It's just accepted as unavoidable. So, like, I went to pick up a rental car, and I just went to pick up a rental car, and it took 3 hours. And while waiting 3 hours to pick up the rental car, there were people who came to drop off a rental car, which is just a process of handing over the keys. And it took them an hour because there was only one person working in the entire rental office. Restaurants were the same. Restaurants that I'd gone to weekly when I lived back home, their dining rooms are shut down, and they only do takeout now because they can't find anybody to work. And America, I mean, living in Japan, customer service comparatively has always seemed really, really shitty in the States. But now it's just kind of accepted as that's the way it is.
So, crumbling public services, terrible service in restaurants, and awful food options. Are you sure you didn't visit the UK by mistake?
I think we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least you guys still have food in your supermarkets, I imagine.
Yeah.
We just want to like keep diving down this well. We should probably bring it up a little bit. There must have been some good things when you were back. You saw family and things like that. But like,
I mean, the trip was great. I'm glad to get to go. I hadn't been able to go back since the pandemic started.
Sure.
And it was nice to catch up with everybody. My girls got to play with their cousins and kind of explore my neighborhood in Florida, and just kind of like make those connections with family that we'd only been able to kind of try to maintain over, Zoom calls and FaceTime and things like that.
Was this their first visit?
No, so I think it'll be the first visit that they substantially remember.
Right.
But pre-corona, we went every year, and so the last time they'd been, they were 4, and they're 7 now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an age at which a lot of core memories are starting to be formed, isn't it?
Yeah. And we've got a 13-year-old cousin, my nephew, and I think they picked up all of his bad habits, all of his language habits. And I don't know. My daughter will get so mad if she finds out I told this story, but she was learning to rollerblade. Florida rollerblading. But she was learning to rollerblade, and her sister jumped out and kind of got in her way and freaked her out. And she yelled at her sister very, very sharply. And I went, "It's not a big deal, relax." And she went, "But Dad, she scared the fuck out of me."
Yeah, if you want to learn English, learning it from a 13-year-old Florida boy, that's the place you want to go, isn't it? You're going
Yeah,
to pick up all the best phrases.
yeah.
We're not just here on this podcast to share language learning tips, though, are we, Daniel Bellamy? What are we here to do on this podcast?
We're here to celebrate beer.
That's right. And we're going to mix things up a little bit this week because Bobby is going to be tasting the beer and describing it to us. And Dan and I are going to be remembering the beer and describing our memories of it. Bobby, what is the beer that we're all going to be celebrating on this week's podcast?
We will be celebrating. We will be celebrating Heretics Caramel Moo-Chiato.
Excellent. So this is a beer that I think you drank here in our tap room in
Yes.
Tokyo, did you not?
Yeah, when I visited your tap room in Tachikawa, I enjoyed Caramel Macchiato, and I thought that it was the best dark beer that I had ever had in my life, and I thought I need to get my hands on this. In fact, I think up until that point, I'd been primarily focused on figuring out a way to get you guys to make some cans. I've been rushing you through your canning licensing process so we can get some cans of Sakamichi Brewing stuff stocked in the restaurant. But then after I had this beer, my priority shifted immediately to stocking this, and this is the first opportunity I've had to do so.
That plan's way on the back burner now. Then we can forget about those Sakamichi cans.
Finally, pressure's off.
Got to stop serving good beer to our customers in the tap room. Before we taste the beer, what can you tell us about it, Bobby? What kind of beer is it?
It is a milk stout with natural caramel and vanilla flavor. It is 6% alcohol by volume, and it is apparently not filtered, not pasteurized, and there have been no shortcuts. It's brewed by a Heretic in Fairfield, California, and I believe there's like some interesting dirt on this company or some backstory that I'd heard from you while we were in the room in Tachikawa.
I don't know about dirt because it's all a matter of public record. But the guy who the guy who founded Heretic was a very renowned homebrewer in the US who won a lot of prizes for his extraordinarily good homebrew. And when he retired from his day job, I think the story was that his wife finally allowed him to open a brewery, which he did. And it's called Heretic. But I don't know exactly what the story is, so I hesitate to share too many details of it. But the long and the short of it was that at some point he sold a controlling stake in that company, and that stake got sold on, and the current owners of the company decided that the one thing that this brewery that was founded by America's greatest homebrewer didn't need anymore was America's greatest homebrewer. So he has been let go from this company. I think he himself has said that he wants people to continue to support it because the team that's brewing there is the same one that he built and brought up. So it's not like we all need to stop drinking their beer anymore, but just goes to show what can happen when private equity gets involved in these kind of decisions.
The little bit that I heard about it from people who know the people involved basically said that it's very much there are two sides to this story, and both people are kind of justified in the actions that have been taken. And that's why we still see Heretic beer over here today, because even though there were a lot of personal relationships involved, even with the importer here in Japan, that they still felt comfortable bringing the beer over despite what had happened. So it sounds like it was, not a great outcome, but maybe mutually agreed upon. Anyway, not necessarily as sordid as if everyone wants to make it out to be, I think.
Well, the story may be multifaceted and well-rounded, but so is the flavor profile.
Oh, check out this professional. This guy's a broadcaster over here. This guy broadcasts. So do you want to take us through it then, Bobby? What are your tasting notes for Heretics Caramel Moo-Chiato?
Two main tasting notes. Unsurprisingly, they are oishi and umai.
Excellent. Let's get the quivering chopstick shots as you take a bit out of this beer.
So I've never been a huge fan of stouts. I've always found them a little bit overpowering. I've always found them a little bit too strong, a little bit too bitter. And even some of the milk stouts that I've had, I found them sweet, but like cloyingly so, which I
Mm.
always kind of felt like was you can oversweeten to compensate for some of that overpowering element to the flavor of it. Um, this, I think, the first time that I had it, I remember thinking that it reminded me of a roast marshmallow in terms of that what they'd call in Japanese that kobashisa, that kind of slightly burnt roast aroma, um, kind of like a caramelized aroma of something
Right.
sweet. And it's sweet without being cloyingly sweet. It's rich without being too dense. Um, the mouthfeel is very, very creamy, and it's just got a really good depth to the body without again being overpowering, which is something that I've always associated with stouts.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say it's not too sweet because I think this beer definitely does have a noticeable amount of sweetness, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's a milk stout, so it's got lactose in it, and that is gonna
yeah,
gonna taste sweet. You
yeah.
want to be able to taste the lactose, but it's a very fine line to walk between balancing out that sweetness and
Hmm.
being able to drink a whole pint of it, right? Or maybe even two of this
Yeah.
beer.
Well, so this for me, I think a pint would be my limit. I wouldn't drink 2 glasses of this in one sitting. And I will say that I think what I had in the Sakamichi Brewing tap room was better than what's coming out of the can.
That's interesting.
And this is something that I don't know if this is within our purview, but something that I noticed recently for myself in enjoying the tastes of different kinds of alcohols. Um, I've noticed that alcohol tastes better when you're already drunk.
Is that a good thing? Is that a slightly worrying sign?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's a little bit of both because I've got a couple of favorite whiskeys, and they're not super fancy or anything like that. But there's a double oaked Woodford Reserve that, again, it was like I had it out somewhere, and it was the best whiskey I'd ever had in my life. And I said I need to get a bottle of this. And when I finally got my own bottle, it wasn't as good. And then a little while later, I had come home from some party and I was in the mood for one more, and I had that Woodford Reserve as a nightcap, and it tasted just as good as I remembered it.
Hmm.
And you know how you kind of get more acclimated to the strength of alcohol as you get progressively drunker.
Right.
And I think there's something about like kind of developing that temporary immunity to the alcohol taste of things, like, the heat or the burn of the whiskey or the liquor or whatever it is that lets you experience the flavor a little bit more.
Yeah, you can focus just on the aromatics rather
Yeah.
than the sort of burning ethanol
Yeah. Yeah.
taste.
And
It's an
so,
interesting thought.
yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think there's a similar effect with this as well. I think I'd had one or two at the tap room before. I had the caramel macchiato there, and I think that really kind of let me just kind of focus on the flavor profile.
Yeah, there's definitely something to that, I think. Having a beer or an alcoholic drink really does, though, and we've talked about this quite a few times, having any kind of experience really depends on a lot of factors.
Yeah.
And drinking beer is and enjoying beer is so much more than just the beer in the glass. It's the people that you're with, it's the environment that you're in, it's the mood that you're in, whether you're eating something, how tired you are on that day. All of these different factors
Right,
can
right.
play in a lot to your experience of what's in that glass.
So I think the common factors between my first experience with caramel macchiato and this can would be, well, the beer and you, Matthew Boynton. And the thing
Yep,
that would be different is that Dan is here. Are you
he's ruined it
suggesting
for
that
you.
it's because he's here that it's not as good anymore?
I didn't want to say it out loud. I was more hinting at it, but you voiced the thoughts of all of us here in that room, Bobby.
Do I make beer taste worse?
Maybe that's a question you need to answer for yourself.
Yeah, we should start asking our customers.
I remember when you did come in to drink the beer, we also recommended local Thai restaurant Khao Mangai, which
Yeah,
is excellent,
very
really
good.
good Thai food if you're in Tachikawa.
Mhm.
Make sure you bring a bowl if you're going to take the noodles to go, though, so you don't have to eat them out of a pint glass.
Well, that's
like
very,
they're forcing
very
me to.
authentic Thai style. And I
It
didn't
is,
I didn't
yes.
realize it when I had ordered takeout from there that they just gave me all of the ingredients to my noodle soup in separate baggies.
You don't have to
And
combine it all together.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's pretty good.
I've helped someone out with that. The only thing I could find that was suitable was one of the paint pots that we had. To be fair, it was an unused paint pot. I didn't scrape a bunch of paint out of it. It was a new one, and I washed it.
Okay, so it hadn't been used for some kind of solvent or industrial cleaning product
It's not
then.
as far as they knew.
Yeah, well, it was clean when they got it.
Yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed that, Bobby.
Could have been easier to use than the pint glass that I ended up going with.
But yeah, why don't we get into that then? So enjoying this beer, the caramel Moo-Chiato, together with something, why don't we spin the wheel of pairings and find out what it is that we are going to be pairing this beer with? We've got 8 options, but Dan, of course, we can't have the 2 most recent ones, which were?
Last week, Crank Session, food.
Okay.
Correct. And prior to that was Wild Card, so
Right.
we're in the clear. Just food.
Just food. So we're crossing off the Thai noodle soup. What are we going to be pairing this beer with this week? Wild Card, number 8. Wow. 3
So
weeks.
what
We've had this
happens
twice.
when you hit a wild card?
You can pair this with literally anything, Bobby. I think we've paired beers before with works of art, with museums that we might like to visit, with experiences that we might have had. Anything you want. What would you like to be doing or seeing or eating or listening to as you enjoy this beer?
So I said one of my first impressions was roast marshmallow. And I think I would love to enjoy this beer next to a campfire, without a doubt.
You're speaking Dan's language here.
So after a long day of tubing, I'm assuming.
Oh,
Bobby-
some sort of river leisure, and maybe a cruise.
Tubing.
Even.
Yeah, tubing.
Yeah, some kind of cruise along the river.
Yeah.
Can you set the scene a bit for your campfire? Are you in the mountains? Are you by a river? By the
I
by
would
the
definitely
beach?
say river by the mountains, which is where I am recording from tonight. Believe it or not.
Right.
And I had thought of food pairings that I'd like to go with for this, and I think I would go with a very crusty brown bread, like a pumpernickel, and some sort of stew, maybe like a rich beef stew. And I know it's a lot of rich elements in one go, but I'm imagining kind of like stew bubbling in the Dutch oven over the fire, still hot, steaming, crusty brown bread, and you break apart with your hands and dip into the stew, and then have that caramel Moo-Chiato to pair with it. And I think kind of the heartiness of the stew and the bread would provide a good counterbalance to the sweetness of the beer.
You're also providing a lot of textural and temperature contrasts there,
Yeah.
which would be very tasty.
Yeah.
I think it's important to have the yin and the yang, to have the hot and the cold. So who would you be drinking this beer with to provide some personality contrast to yourself?
That's a very good question. I enjoy a lot of quiet, relaxing alone time with my beer.
Relaxing in the gentleman's way. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think this is taking so long, it's making me a little bit sad.
Well, maybe we could break it down a bit by defining your personality. So if the stew is hot and rich, the bread is steaming and crusty, the beer is cool and creamy, what 2 adjectives would you use to describe your personality?
Well, personality. I was going to say hot, but you went personality.
Being hot isn't a personality, Bobby, as you have sadly
It's
found out
not.
over the last 15 years.
I think my loud and attention seeking. No. If I'm at the campfire, my personality is very quiet and very chill.
Right.
And I think if we're looking for contrast, I would look for somebody who is a good laugh, is entertaining.
Like
Somebody
Carrot
who-
Top.
Yeah, somebody who would kind of lead the conversation when I don't feel like being on. I have a friend. I have a friend named Mai, who's really, really good at that. I have a friend named Sarah. Um, I would say my podcast co-host Ollie Horn, except that I spent some time with him recently and was reminded that he asks a lot of questions and then immediately interrupts you and doesn't let you answer the question.
That's masterful podcast work right there.
Yeah.
Well, you said quiet and retiring, so I was going to say, well, contrast that with loud and annoying. Yes, Ollie Horn probably would be the best choice there.
But I've never had the opportunity to have a beer in person with either Casey or Joe from Ishikawa Summit to see. And that's on my bucket list. It's something that I definitely like to do.
Right.
And I think Casey is also can be, I think, a little bit more reserved, but is also a good conversationalist. And Joe, I know, enjoys his beer and has a lot to say and is very witty and funny. And I think either one of them would be a good addition to that scene.
Yeah, and if you went to Casey's house, then he has the fire pit for you to enjoy this scene at.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a 3-way podcast collaboration in all of our futures here. We can make this happen.
Yeah.
That's a good pairing. You've painted a real picture there. Dan, I want you to cast your memory back to when you last drank this beer.
Yep.
Wild card. What are you going to pair it with?
I thought Bobby's description was great. So I'm going to pair this beer with I'm going to go whole hog, similar to what Bobby did here. I've got a whole scene for you. Okay, it's me and Bobby.
Yep.
We're at the first B1 level game of the Saga Ballooners of the year.
Yeah.
We have a keg of caramel Moo-Chiato between us.
You're in the executive box.
We're on one side of the arena, opposite the current and way worse. What is the arena announcer?
Yep.
We're on the opposite side of this Yahoo. We also have microphones that are hooked up to the PA system. So basically, anytime he says something, we get to clown him while drinking caramel Moo-Chiato. And at the end, the people get to decide which one they liked better. But it doesn't matter because Bobby's not doing it anymore anyway. That's what I want.
I like that
Bobby,
very much.
How does that sound to you?
That sounds fantastic, honestly.
A dream come true.
Yeah, let's make it happen.
Yep. I'm going to keep mine short and brief. I think in an outdoor onsen, a rotemburo, perhaps one similar to the one I visited recently, which was on the roof of the hotel, and it was completely dark outside. So the only light was in this boat-shaped rotemburo that I was in on top of the hotel. Keg of this, 3 glasses, and the 3 of us just chilling and enjoying some nice beer in the nude.
Very, very nice. And I'm assuming it's going to be an onsen somewhere cold.
Oh, yeah, absolutely freezing. Yes.
Yeah. I one time I went to an onsen in Hokkaido at like a snowboard and ski resort, and they let you take beer into the onsen, and it was so cold that you're sitting in the onsen and you don't notice the cold because you're in the onsen, but your wet hair freezes on your head, and when you reach up and touch your head, it's crinkly and crackling with the frozen water in it. And this would be a perfect drink to accompany that as well.
Some more textural contrasts there with the crinkly, crackly hair and the smooth and creamy beer.
Yeah,
quite three very potent scenes that we've
not gonna
imagined
go in
here.
the onsen with you if you're gonna be chewing on my hair.
Well, why do we see how you feel after 2 or 3 glasses of caramel Moo-Chiato? 3 very potent scenes. I hope that we are able to bring these to life someday. I think all the fans.
They're all achievable.
They are all achievable. Yeah, these are far more likely than some of the other scenarios that we have conjured over the past 100 episodes. Good pairings. Good pairing, Bobby. That was a real picture.
Yeah. Is this the first time you've said on the recording that it's the 100th episode?
I think it might be. Yeah. Who really cares about this? Is this a big deal? Is that a big deal to you?
Super casual.
It is the 100th episode. We have done 99 other episodes to date, and
it's an
they
achievement.
were all similarly chaotic.
Congratulations. Otsukare-sama desu. That's something to be proud of.
Thank you very much. Yeah, if only we had done anything that we could be proud of over the past 100 episodes. No, really,
Keizoku
we
wa,
do
do
it.
you know the expression Keizoku wa chikara nari?
No, I don't. What does that
Uh,
mean?
it means just sticking to it. Keizoku is the continuation of something,
Right.
and chikara ni naru, chikara nari means it becomes your strength. Just
There you go.
continuing it.
Any day now, we're going to get good at this.
You would certainly hope so, wouldn't you? No, like we do this because it's fun to do and because we get to interact with fun and interesting people. We don't make any money from it, and we don't have any sponsors or advertisers or anything like that. We just enjoy doing it, and we've
Yeah.
enjoyed doing the last 100 episodes. We will hopefully continue to enjoy doing the next 100 episodes. So thank you to you, Bobby, for joining us on this very special 100th episode. It sounds like I'm wrapping it up there. I'm not. We're
Yeah.
moving on to
Well,
the
it's
next segment.
absolutely my pleasure. And if you want to invite me back for the 200th, I can try to get a hold of some Sakamichi beer for that one.
Yeah, we have another 2 years to plan that one out. But let's not go wild. We'll see what we're able to do by that point. Maybe we could fly you up to Tokyo for an in-person recording. Um, I'm talking in broad terms there because, of course, you are down in Kyushu. That's
Yep.
what you, the listener, can't see is that we're doing this one over Zencaster. You're down in Kyushu, as you said, out in the forest by a river.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to tell us a little bit more about where you are right now, Bobby?
Sure. So when I first came to Japan, I lived in Saga, and then I moved to Fukuoka, and for many years was based in Fukuoka, in the western part of Fukuoka City, and then later in Itoshima, which I don't know if you're familiar with Itoshima, but it's kind of famous around Japan for being they had a migration boom in Itoshima because it's got this lovely coastline. It's got great farmland, and it was kind of the focus of a lot of people wanting to move there for remote work, move there to experience the country lifestyle. And it's got Japan's most popular, most revenue producing farmers market, vegetable market, like one of these
Okay.
direct from farm to
What,
market.
what is so special about it that causes it to be so revenue producing?
I don't know, but like I think it's got the highest. It's just got the highest earnings of anyone in all of Japan. It's very good. It's got a lot of fresh vegetables, a lot of fresh meat, and things like that. But I lived in this area for a long time, and always rented. And when Corona hit, my wife and I started thinking about other sources of revenue. Corona hit many industries very, very hard. And for the kind of TV and talent industry, a lot of what I used to do was event based. I'd say maybe 30-40% of my work was in events. And events just disappeared. And also, you could no longer. I used to travel to Tokyo to do TV projects, and you weren't supposed to leave the prefecture. And all kind of like new and incoming TV projects dried up. My wife and I started to think about where we wanted to live, how we wanted to work, and felt like we'd be more comfortable if we owned our own property and had some way to produce revenue on our own property. So I started my own company, and we found a place to move to from Itoshima to Karatsu, which is in Saga Prefecture. And so she's originally from a different area of Karatsu. We looked around at a bunch of different places. Itoshima, since it's so popular, was a little bit out of our price range. And wanting to run a business, there's already a very, very active economy and a lot of competition in Itoshima. So we decided we wanted to focus on Karatsu, which is also famous for the ocean, but it's got beautiful mountainous areas as well. And we found this property in the mountains where we could move, have a lot of land, and start a business. And when thinking about, what sort of business would be corona proof, we thought food and beverage. Um,
Masterful.
Masterful, right? But no, so we moved here about a year and a half ago, and we renovated an old Japanese house, and half of that house we turned into a restaurant, and we built a big deck that overlooks this river in the mountains, and we started a barbecue rental property and a hamburger and barbecue chicken shop.
And you make your own barbecue sauce as well, right?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
sauce blends.
Make
What have
barbecue
you put in?
sauce and honey mustard and jerk spice that we use on chicken that we serve in the restaurant.
Yeah, of all the careers that could be open to a TV personality, you seem to have chosen one that involves actual work. And I'm curious as to why that was.
What are the other options?
Owning a bar, owning a hostess bar, owning a hotel,
Hmm.
opening your own airline. I'm sure these were all open to you, Bobby.
So I think one thing that I think a lot of, I mean, people who move to Japan experience this in general, but I think you spend too much time here, and then you think about kind of transitioning out of whatever it is you do, and you find that your resume doesn't lend itself very well to making a big transition. If I were to go back to, people who come over here as English teachers or ALTs, they want to move back to their home countries, and they find that 5 years being an assistant English teacher at a Japanese middle school doesn't open a lot of doors when you get back home. And I think for me personally, TV personality sounds great and all, and it is while it lasts, but when it dries up, there's not a lot of crossover. I know people who have become life coaches. I know people who have become consultants or talent agency managers or things like that. But I know a lot more people who have gotten into their like 50s and 60s in the industry without any fallback plan and have regretted it. And so, since so much of my work was food focused, either food reporting or the cooking segment, and I had this profile in the area as somebody who cooks, and I love cooking, I think a restaurant was always an option. And then being able to leverage the restaurant and the profile into kind of being able to produce a line of sauces. Um, it is a lot of work, but I think it's very, very well tailored to kind of exactly the niche that I've carved out for myself since I've been here.
Yeah, I guess the other option open to people who, you know, whose job is their personality and whose job is presenting things would be to move into content creation on another platform, right? You could have
Yeah.
gone back to YouTube. You used to be a YouTuber, right? You
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
have tried to restart that. But did you just feel like that wasn't an option?
So I always have been open to finding additional sources of revenue. And so a handful of times I started in YouTube and then was able to transition that into TV. And my YouTube was never, I think the most I ever made, I think once I made like $1,500 in 1 month on YouTube. But the average when I was at my peak was like $500 to $600, which is not enough to support a family of four. And so TV was always was more of the revenue generator for me. And then when I thought, well, I could go back to YouTube and it'd be supplemental income. In my personal experience, I found that monetizing stuff on social media platforms got just more and more difficult, and the returns got fewer and far between as time progressed. And I don't know if it was because my content wasn't interesting enough, or the way that monetization worked has changed a little bit to pay out less, um, or just kind of the market for online social media content is so broad now that there's a smaller piece of the pie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you was talking before about a very competitive economy, and
Yeah,
that is absolutely what that is, isn't it?
yeah.
Um, as somebody though who is a maybe a known face in your local area,
Mhm.
have you found that that has smoothed a few wheels as you have started this new business venture?
Um, in terms of what? In terms of like permissions or local Hokensho issues or
Well, yeah, talking to the health office, talking to the bank, talking to people about the various licenses that you need to run the business, dealing with suppliers. Even, I mean, we've talked to some suppliers who we will email them and say, "Hey, we want to buy some stuff. Can we have a price list, please?" And
yeah.
they just turn around and say, "No, no, you can't." we are not taking new customers
Wow.
at this time. Um, so I'm wondering if you have been able to use your renown to your advantage as you have started this new business.
Yes and no. Um, yeah, yes, in that there have been cases on a person-to-person basis. When you're dealing with an organization like a bank or the health officer or things like that. Um, on an organizational level, they can't really cut any corners for you. But on a person-to-person level, there'll be times when someone will notice who you are and go, "Oh, well, I can take another look at that," or "I can be friendlier to this person." Um, in terms of things like getting loans, we purchased the property and we purchased the home, and the business is on the home property. But for getting a home loan, being in the talent industry and being a foreigner are both huge strikes against you.
Right.
um, and so the first place that we went to just flat out said, your business hasn't been established for long enough. I think we applied for a loan, um, the first still in the first fiscal year since we started our business, and they said, if this business is your primary income, we need you to have 2 years on the books before we can even consider you for a loan. And then when I went to the Saga Bank, which is the area where I've been on TV for the longest, they were more willing to see if there were exceptions that could be made or things that could be done, or to actually look at the numbers and consider, even though my business didn't even have a full fiscal year on the books yet. Um, but yeah, the talent industry being a strike against you is very, very common, even for Japanese people, just because financial institutions are very, very much aware that the talent industry is very fluid.
Yeah, from the outside looking in, I always kind of assume that everyone on TV knows each other and everyone on TV is incredibly rich. But
Yeah,
obviously that isn't true.
no, not at all. Um,
We had none of those benefits, did we?
Not at all. Absolutely not.
yeah.
We often get asked about like what some of the challenges in setting up this business were, and we're in similar sectors, Bobby.
Yeah.
But what about some of the things that were easier than you expected them to be?
Um, I find that the barrier to entry for running a food or beverage business in Japan is comparatively low, or it seems. I've never opened a restaurant in the States, but the requirements are very reasonable.
Hmm.
And so it was pretty easy because I'd already had my food and hygiene. What's the word? How would you sekininsha shikaku,
The
the
certificate, you are the
certification, the
you're
certificate of
the responsible
responsibility.
party.
Yeah, I'd already had that from years back because as part of like TV events and things like that, I would occasionally sell food at festivals or open up a shop for an event. Um, and so if you have that, you take a course, like a day long course to receive it. There's no test or anything like that. You just take a course and then you receive it, and it's valid for life. And unless you actually have a physical location that you operate out of, you just hang on to your license. And if you ever open up, a stall somewhere, they come out and inspect to make sure that the stall meets all of the hygiene requirements. But once you actually open a physical location, then you're required to attend another course once a year, um, for food service. I'm sure like the different requirements and things, the rules are very different for alcohol service, and but if you're serving food, you just have to take a course once a year, and then there are a handful of boxes that you need to check. You need to have a separate sink for washing hands and washing dishes. You need to have something that delineates your kitchen from your customer space. It's just a handful of things like that that are very
Yeah, and
reasonable.
they're
And
all very clearly laid out as well, aren't they? With diagrams and very clear explanations, and you can see
yeah,
why they exist as well.
yeah,
It's like, no, if you check all of these very reasonable boxes, then
yeah.
there will be no problem here.
And
You
I
will
don't
be approved.
know about you, but for us, it was enough to just submit a diagram saying this is the layout of our restaurant, and nobody ever came on site to check it out.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting. No, people did come when we first opened, and I also had to do that second inch training. Although there was a test at the one that I went to at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but in a very Japanese way, it didn't matter whether you got all the questions right or all the questions wrong. They gave you the license anyway.
Huh.
It was just to kind of confirm that you had been paying attention.
Yeah.
But yeah, the health office came to inspect us when we first opened. We don't serve food except nuts.
Yeah.
They said you need to put a curtain in front of that shelf that has the nut dishes on, and we'll be back in 7 years to check that you've done that.
Oh, wow.
So that was the extent of our interaction.
Big
with
deadline.
them. Yes. Well, I mean, we've been open for over 3 now, so
It's coming up.
almost halfway there. I would like to say that we have already put that curtain up, so we're ahead of schedule on the curtain installation.
Interesting thing is that so for the restaurant side of the business, extremely reasonable. We're trying to open up an Airbnb style room that for people who come out and barbecue and drink, we're mostly accessible by car. So people who want to drink and then can't drive home, we're trying to be able to provide a place to stay. There's an onsen within walking distance of our property. There's the river leisure area within walking distance of our property. So the idea would be to have people come out and barbecue, use the onsen, and stay the night. And so we've prepared this very nice kind of lodge style room that could fit a family of 5 or 6, and the application for permission to operate what they call a minpaku, which is not a hotel. It's not the what they call the ryokangyo, the hospitality industry. It's a different classification for homestays, basically, for Airbnb. You're operating out of a home that you also use as your residence or something like that. And the process for that is such a bureaucratic, interminable pain in the ass. We've resubmitted the application packet, no joke, more than 20 times. And
Whoa.
it's been more than a half a year process. And it's just infuriating. And the only thing we can imagine is that it's this complicated because they don't want us to do it. They do
Right.
not want Airbnbs.
Is it the kind of situation where you submit it and there's something wrong and they send it back and you can't just like adjust that?
Yes,
It's like
exactly
do the
that.
whole thing again.
You got to do the whole thing again. And instead of sending you a list of everything that's wrong at once and how to correct it at once, they go one by one. It's so it's stuff like it looks like you've measured from the surface of one wall to the surface of the other wall. For this wall, you need to measure from the interior midpoint of the wall, but don't measure to the interior midpoint of the other wall. For that wall, you need to measure to the surface. It's insane stuff.
When we were applying for our brewing license, it was a similar bureaucratic nightmare. And the tax office would constantly be throwing up what seemed to be totally insignificant and spurious objections every week, and something that we had to adjust or something that we had to fix.
Yeah.
And I think that part of it is that they are trying to make that process difficult because they don't want a lot of people having those licenses.
Yeah.
Do you think it's the same kind of thing? Like, I remember Airbnbs had a huge moment in Japan for a short while, and then the government came crushing down on them. Is this legislation new? Is it designed to prevent people from opening Airbnbs?
I don't know if it's new. I know that it is most likely designed to prevent people from opening Airbnbs. And I think, there was a period where all of the kind of like gray areas about the legality of Airbnbs, Japan's policy was to kind of like overlook or not enforce because they were very worried about the tourism boom, especially when the Olympics were planned to be a big incoming tourism boost. And they had realized that they didn't have enough accommodations. And so it was like, let's overlook the issues with Airbnbs and all of these ridiculously strict laws against them while it serves our purposes. But then, as soon as they realized that wasn't going to happen, it was this crackdown where I don't know why. Well, I mean, I'm assuming it's because the hospitality industry pays politicians, but but yeah, it seems very much like they just don't want to. They don't want to lose control. I'm sure they don't receive the same amount of taxes for minpaku, for like Airbnb stuff, as they do that they would get from hotels. I'm sure it's not in their interest to have people doing less regulated, less tax forms of business than big hotels that there are more fees for.
I had heard that some friends of ours that own a couple beer bars said that they used some government funding, like a special program, to buy digital registers for their places, which was
Oh
something
yeah,
they were going to put in anyway.
yeah,
But apparently, they found that there was a government fund providing money for this kind of thing, which I wish we had known about because we paid out of pocket. But the reason that this is done is so it's you now have a digital record of all of the money coming into your
Oh
business,
wow,
so you can't, places that have been cash based, where it was pretty easy to take out a little more money here or underreport what you had been earning or however you wanted to kind of finagle things.
yeah,
Now suddenly everything's done digitally and there's a record of all of your transactions for the day. So
yeah,
not altruistic at all.
yeah,
Whatever they cloak that in, helping people modernize or accept more payments for more visiting people from overseas, and
yeah. It's not
however
just the
they
digital
wrap that
register
up.
stuff. They also have grants that the government will pay you to create EC sites for online sales. And again, it's um, as you guys exchanged a look there. Did you just
Yeah,
pay
we have
to make your
recently
own?
paid for setting up our own EC site. So again, information that could have been useful to us 6 months ago. It's our own fault for not looking it up, I suppose.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, but then like Daniel was saying, there's always kind of like this ulterior motive. It's to get that paper trail, to get a record. And since I've started running my own restaurant, I've become very, very aware of the times when I go out to restaurants and will notice. So I ask for receipts because a lot of things I can write off as expenses. Um, and I notice that unless you specifically ask for a receipt, or if I'm in a group and I'm the only one that asks for a receipt, I notice that a lot of times they don't enter it into the register.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We've uncovered something here.
Hmm.
Perhaps we should stop pulling at this thread before we unravel the entire food and beverage
Yes.
industry. It is true that once you've opened your own place, you start looking at other bars and restaurants with fresh eyes and
Yeah.
like noticing things that you wouldn't have noticed before, about even just about the way they've decorated or the
Oh,
way that
absolutely.
they have put their furniture together, where their speakers are positioned, little things like that. And picking up bits and pieces here and there, you can bring back to your own place.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to ask about, a potential similarity or maybe a big difference, is that we said that you have developed your own kind of spice blends and your dressings and so on.
Mhm.
You have your own restaurant and that, so you must be doing recipe development,
Yeah.
and that's a big part of our job here as well. We're developing the recipes for all the beers that we make, but I'm wondering if it is a similar process or quite a different process. How do you develop the recipes for the things that you make?
So I've had kind of experience creating recipes for TV projects or for events or for cooking classes and things like that. I published a cookbook in Japanese through one of the TV shows that I did for a little while, and so I think creating recipes in a way that the biggest thing when you're kind of either putting out a cookbook or putting out something that you expect people to copy and to actually try out is to find a way to be consistent. And that's also important, as a provider of beer or a provider of food. You want your customer to be able to come back and go, this isn't wildly different from the last time that I had it. This is the same thing I ordered last time. And so I think I had experience with kind of nailing down measurements and nailing down times and things like that to be able to make sure that a recipe was consistent from creating it once and then creating it again the next time. But for developing the sauces and things like that, it was a learning curve for me to realize that you have to tweak your recipes based on the quantity that you're producing. especially something
Right.
for like the barbecue sauce. If I make, I started, making it for use in a recipe, or started making it for, personal use. I'd make enough for me to cook one meal or to use one bottle. And the quantities that you need to get the flavor in one bottle are not the same quantities or not the same proportions as what you need to, make 50 bottles at the same time. Because like things with, capsaicin in them, or things with like vinegar in them, um, they their effect is much stronger. I think the easiest way to explain it would be to give an example. If I'm making one bottle of barbecue sauce, I'd use about 60 milliliters of vinegar, of apple cider vinegar, to make one bottle of barbecue sauce. But if I'm making 100 bottles of barbecue sauce, I'll only use 1,000 milliliters of apple cider vinegar, because multiplying that 60 milliliters by 100 and using 6,000, using 6 liters, makes it way too sour. So it's that the development process, you have your base recipe, and then figuring out how to scale it, figuring out how to tweak the quantities to make it still come out to the same flavor when you produce it in bulk. It was really challenging.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think that is similar in a way to brewing, because a lot of places will have like a little pilot system that they're able to trial recipes on. We don't here, but a lot of places do, and that could be 20, 50 liters, that system,
Yeah.
whereas their main brewing system could be 2,000, 5,000 liters.
Yeah.
And it's not always just a simple scaling up of a recipe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you do need to understand what is the active ingredient in here, and is it going to scale in a linear sense, or is it going to scale in a logarithmic sense? Like how do we need to adjust this
Yeah.
as we increase the amounts by 100-fold or 200-fold in
Yeah.
this
And
recipe?
I hadn't had any experience with that up until now. I think just in terms of like menu development, it's just a sense of what are people enjoying? How can we rearrange kind of the ingredients that we already have on hand? For example, so we do a bunch of like grilled chicken sandwiches, and all our sandwiches have lettuce and tomato. And if you've got grilled chicken and you've got lettuce and tomato, and we make a honey mustard, you could also do a grilled chicken salad, which is something that you don't really see in Japan. I don't know if you have it in the UK, but in the States, any restaurant you go to will serve just a piece of grilled chicken cut up on top of a big
Mm,
salad,
sure.
and it's very popular. And I don't see that anywhere here. Um,
Something I make a lot at home. Very
yeah,
delicious.
yeah. So it's kind of taking what you already have and figuring out how to repurpose them to create more variety, and then also how to incorporate kind of like local products into your food, because that's a big selling point. So the mountain areas here, there's a lot of yuzu gosho. You know yuzu gosho?
Yuzu pepper, right?
Yeah, yeah, like a yuzu pepper blend. And so we're gonna use some of the local yuzu gosho to make like a yuzu gosho mayonnaise for a grilled chicken
Mm,
sandwich. And
nice.
And that sounds
yeah,
really good.
yeah,
One of the things we have to think about is we only have 8 taps here. And obviously, there are loads of different styles of beer. There are more than 8 different styles of beer.
yeah,
So we have to balance having stuff on tap that customers want to drink, but not just having hazy IPAs, because those are the flavor of the month. And also having stuff on tap that we want to drink ourselves, or that we might be interested in having something slightly unusual on tap
yeah.
from time to time. Do you have to walk a similar kind of balancing act when you're planning your menu at the restaurant?
Um, I think, yeah, variety. I have to keep an eye on variety, because if you have repeat customers, you do get the occasional repeat customer who goes, "I love this one thing that you make, and I want to come and eat that every week." But you get more repeat customers who enjoy the atmosphere and enjoy just the general flavor of your restaurant, or the theme of your restaurant, or what you do in general. And for that person, th- they might come once a month because they like the place. But if you create a sense of variety in your menu, and you go, I've got enough different menu options for them to find something new every time they come, then they might come every week.
Yeah, totally. And it's interesting sometimes that customers will come in and say, "Hey, this one-off beer you made, this one-off thing you made for your menu,
Yeah.
you need to start making this all the time. This
Yeah.
needs to be a permanent addition to the
Yeah. Yeah.
menu." And this is a slightly strained metaphor, but I'm guilty of this sometimes when I've got the Spotify playlist on in here, and some song that I haven't heard before that I really like comes on, and I'm really enjoying it, and I
Yeah.
think, damn, I should change the playlist to be all generated off this song, forgetting that the playlist that I was just listening to did generate this song and will continue to generate good songs that I want to
Yeah.
listen to. So
Well,
the very straight metaphor here is like, no, we made this beer. We will continue to make good beers like
yeah.
this, but they will be different and you will enjoy those as well. So
Well,
no, we're not going to be making it permanent, but keep coming back, please.
yeah. But I think also that idea of like customers saying, I enjoy this, you need to incorporate this into your regular menu. I think getting a sense of what the customers enjoy is a part of it, but also kind of like continually switching things up and trying new things lets you learn what works for the business as well. There was so we make burgers and grilled chicken sandwiches, and uh there was a couple weeks back that I ordered way too many tomatoes, and I had a tray of burgers that it was like, if we don't use this up today, it's going to be wasted. And so I just threw it all in a pot and I made chili, and then made a pot of rice, and we made chili beans and rice and served it as a special. And it's very, very different from what we generally serve. But number one, it was great loss control. And number two, it was like you going from having to cook each individual burger, each individual sandwich, to having a big pot of chili that when someone orders it, you can just scoop out of a pot. It was so much less involved and so much less work. It was like, this is a great thing that we could use in the future that we've learned as a new kind of strategy for the business.
That's great. Yeah. And as you say, very good business to be able to not throw something away that you had too much of. I think 99% of restaurant specials are
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
realizing
Yeah.
that, aren't they?
Yeah.
Before we opened here, I'm going to make this the last question, but before we opened here, we were doing a bit of reading about um, restaurants and running a place in the food and beverage industry. And we came across this phrase, surprise and delight. And the blog post or whatever we read said that you should always try and surprise and delight your customers, or provide them with moments of surprise and delight.
That's
So
insane. Oh man, I got to remember.
one of the
I've been
things that we
going for
do,
surprise and disgust.
one of the things that we do in here is if we're pouring a beer and the keg finishes, it was the last keg of that beer, so we're not able to fill the glass, we
Yeah.
give that to the customer for free and say,
Ah,
look,
okay.
sorry, couldn't fill the glass, so here you are, this one's on the house. And so it goes from being a slightly disappointing experience of, oh, I couldn't get the beer I wanted, to a surprising and delightful experience of, hey, I just got three-quarters of a glass of beer for free.
For
And now
free.
I get
Yeah.
to order another one
And it's that
to
special
replace the one.
promotional sense of like, you like being the 1 millionth customer. You
Yes,
get something special.
exactly.
It's like you are the customer that was lucky enough to be there when the keg ran dry.
And especially if like there's a sticker on the board that says this one is running dry soon. So there may be a competition between a few customers to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
who can be the one to pull that lucky pint.
That's really
Um,
that's really clever. What would be the equivalent of that for the burger shop?
Well, that's what I was about to ask you. What do you do to surprise and delight your customers?
You tell them they ordered the last burger, and you bring one out with like 3 bites out of it.
This one I was
You
actually
got
eating
this for
for
free.
my dinner.
we
You
just
can
we
have it.
we just ran out of gas, so your burger is only 25% cooked, but it's free.
It's called blue. We've cooked it blue.
Yeah. So what we'll do a lot of times is we'll give them things that aren't on the menu, and and it's not it. It'd be great if there was some sort of systemization to it, like when this happens, you could potentially win this, but we do a lot of like behind the scenes, what they call in Japanese ura menu.
Hmm.
Um, so
Secret
like
menu.
if we run out of burgers for the day, we go, well, we've still got grilled chicken, and we've got pizza crust, and we can make you a barbecue chicken pizza, or or when somebody orders, a lot of times we'll give them like tastings of like the sauces or the spices to go with French fries, and it's not, I wouldn't say it works as surprise and delight. It works as more like hospitality, more like
Right.
this is on the house. But the angle is also, now you know that our honey mustard tastes great. Maybe you'll want to buy a bottle on the way home.
Yeah, I think it does need to be unexpected in a sense, doesn't it? It's not something that you expect to happen every time that you go,
Yeah.
but when it does come up, it's a nice surprise,
Yeah.
And it's an enjoyable experience.
For regular customers, a lot of times they'll go, well, what do you recommend today? And I'll go, I'll make you something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Barbecue chicken pizza. That sounds extremely good as well.
Good.
Dan,
Yeah.
we're going to have to plan a business trip to Fukuoka or to
Just expense
to
the whole
Kyushu.
thing.
Yeah.
Bobby, can you tell us exactly where we should be going for this business trip?
Yeah,
where
I
we
need
can
to, because
find
it's
your
not
delicious...
in Fukuoka. So it's in Saga Prefecture, in the city of Karatsu, in the village of Nanayama, and we're called Smoky Mountain. So if you look up Smoky Mountain Nanayama in either English or Japanese, you'll find it on Google. If you only look up Smoky Mountain in Japanese, you will find a Filipino garbage dump that has a slum built on it.
Mm.
So
They also have good food there.
it's not there. It's not that.
The barbecue chicken pizza is to die for, believe me.
But check out, Smoky Mountain Nanayama. And as of today, we finally got our online sales for the barbecue sauce, honey mustard, and jerk spice working. So if you'd like to
great.
order some and you don't live in Hokkaido or Okinawa, we'll send you some.
Excellent. Well, Bobby, thank you very much for joining us for this 100th episode. Spectacular. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I recommend everyone goes and checks out some Bobby's Blend spices. They would pair extremely well with just about everything we have on the menu in here.
Just dump the bottle of jerk spice
Directly
Not while I'm
into-
watching you.
right down your face.
Thanks
for being on, Bobby. This was great.
Thank you so much. Nice to speak with you for the first time, Daniel, and I look forward to visiting your tap room again.
Excellent. We will look forward to that. Thank you, Bobby, for joining us. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. I feel like I don't thank you enough, but thank you. Thank you for being here.
Welcome.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you, Matthew, for putting in all the hard work of organizing this podcast.
And
thank
congratulations on
you.
the big 100.
Yeah, that's right, man. And thank you, the listener, for putting up with our nonsense for yet another episode of Sakamichi Nights. We will see you again next time.